Well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Lovely to see you all again on such a beautiful, bright, I was going to say summer's day. It's not summer, but it feels like summer here where I am in the south of England. So today I want to talk about actually what I think is a very, very important topic: communication. Communication is everything in our lives, everything we do. Um, Let me start by showing a particular statement. Now, this is something I have been saying for many, many years. The quality of your life is the quality of your communication. It literally is that simple. Think of problems. Think of people you know when relationships have gone wrong. What do you hear people say? They say things like, he didn't listen to me, or she didn't understand, or they don't understand what I need or what I want. Has anyone ever heard those type of phrases coming from people? You can give me a thumbs up if you can, and if you can put your camera on, it would be lovely to see all the different faces. Communication is absolutely everything in life. The way we communicate will determine the quality of life that we actually have. Now, that's very powerful. Let me give you a couple of examples. There were two great speakers of antiquity. One was a Roman, he was called Cicero. One was a Greek, he was called Demosthenes. And thousands of years ago, these were the great speakers of their time. And when they were going to speak, people would come from miles around, walking on horseback, on donkey, on foot, to hear these men speak. And Cicero spoke in the Forum in Rome. And when he spoke, it was said that men would stand in awe. They'd stand in awe. They couldn't believe what they heard. They couldn't believe how impressive he was as a speaker. And then we come to Demosthenes. Demosthenes was a Greek. He spoke in the Parthenon. And when he spoke, men would say, "Let us march. Let us march." They were willing to go to war. So Cicero was good. Cicero was an incredible speaker. He was very good. But Demosthenes was great. And in those days, going to war was a terrible thing, with edged weapons, awful. So the ability, ladies and gentlemen, the ability to use the power of words, the power of language, to reach out into the world and to touch other people deep in their heart, to affect them, to inspire them, to motivate them, to get them to want to do something. This is a most incredible skill and something I feel that all of us should be looking to improve on. Now, today I'm going to bend this talk a little bit towards the coaching world, because most of us here are in the world of coaching. Let me ask you all a question. I want you all to think of a moment in your own life when you truly felt understood by someone. So think of a moment when you, in communication with someone, you felt that they truly, truly understood what you meant. And what did they do that made a difference to either them or to you? So communication, so important. Right. Communication is at the heart of coaching. Trust is built by clarity. And I'm talking coaching here, and I'm using the word client, but it's not just to do with coaching. It's not just to do with clients. anyone you are communicating with in your life, your mother, your father, your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your sister, your brother, your son, your daughter, your best friend, anyone you are communicating with. They feel safe when they understand what is happening and why. Ambiguity breeds anxiety. When you're with someone, when you're communicating, the meaning is co-created by both of you. And what I'm about to say now is so important. What is said matters less than what is heard. Now, I hope you all understand what I mean by that. What is said matters less than what the other person hears. You as I, as professional communicators, must learn to bridge that gap. Goals, for example. Goals need precise language, clarity, crystal vision, crystal language. Vague goals produce vague results. Clear articulation. What does that mean? The ability to say it well. It unlocks commitment and accountability. You know, when you're working with a client, and it doesn't have to be client, it can be anyone, but I'll use the word client. The client's interpretation is the reality you are working with, not your intention. So there's a big difference. You know, I often hear people say, well, I was very clear. And my answer is, well, no, you really weren't. If the other person didn't get the message clearly, no, you weren't clear. So let's move on. This is quite important. And I've taken this from a really good guy called Gary Goodman. He wrote a book called Crystal Clear Communication. But I like this statement. The goal of communication is not to be understood. It is to make it impossible to be misunderstood. And there is a difference. There's a big difference, right? So what's the message behind this? The message is that excellent communicators don't leave it to chance. They don't leave it to chance. So there are 5 fundamentals of clear communication. 5 fundamentals. Okay. Number 1, know your outcome. So before you start, know what is it you want to achieve in this conversation you are having or about to have. What do you want the listener to think, to feel, or what do you want them to do after you finished communicating? You must have that clear in your mind. Next, know your audience. I see this so often. People make this mistake. Know your audience. Use your audience's language, their frame of reference, their way of thinking, their knowledge level, their emotional state. Go with them. Communication is not always just speaking. It could be written. So when you're communicating with someone, make a decision. What's the best way? Should it be spoken, written, visual? Now, each of these has got a different power and a different purpose. The next one, oh my goodness, so important. Use plain language. I'll give you an example shortly. Use plain, simple, straightforward, easily to be understood language. Short sentences. No jargon. Academics are the worst for this. Oh my goodness. They like to impress people with their intelligence by using complicated language. We'll come to that. Okay. And then, when you've spoken, when you've made a point, confirm the understanding, close the loop, check in, invite questions, and if necessary, say it again. All right. So I have a question for all of you, a little exercise. Look at these 5. Think of yourself when you communicate. And I'd like you to rate yourself. Which of these 5, which is your strongest? And which needs a bit more development? So of these 5 things, what is your strongest? And what do you think maybe you need to develop a little bit more? And finally, most people overestimate their clarity. The real test is not, did I say it clearly? The real test is, did they understand it clearly? And there's a difference. Big, 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 big difference. Okay. So, know your audience. This is the foundation of all communication. What do you already know? Start where they are, not where you are. Again, a big mistake people make. Start where your audience is, not where you are. What language and what type of language do they use? How do they speak? Copy it, mirror it. Use their vocabulary, not yours. What do they care about? Connect your message to their priorities. What are they worried about? What are they resisting? What are their fears? Address those directly and proactively. This is an interesting one. What is their preferred style? Are they detailed oriented? They like precise details? Or are they very big picture? Are they formal? Are they informal? Oh, someone has just said my computer screen isn't showing. Let me share that again. Can you all see it now? Okay, let me go back. Did you all see this screen, the 5 fundamentals of clear communication? Yep, so you saw that. Okay, cool. So now we're know your audience. Thank you. And I've written on the right of this slide, coaching application. For example, this is just a little example. When I'm dealing with a new client, a new coachee, in my initial session, we call it an intake session. Before explaining how my coaching works and what coaching is, I usually go through a few questions. I would say, have you worked with a coach before? How do you prefer to receive feedback? That's a very important question. I want to make sure I give my feedback in a way that they want and they are comfortable with. And then I would ask something like, regarding our coaching, what would make this feel valuable to you? And that will then shape my ongoing relationship with that individual. And when I'm coaching people, the way I speak and communicate with one client is a little bit different to another client. I structure it to be appropriate for the client so they get the most benefit from it. Okay. The power of plain language. I've got to read this to you. So I know you can see it on my screen, but the facilitation of the co-creative dialogue process enables the progressive operationalization of the client's desired outcome states through the collaborative identification of their core values architecture. Or I could say Coaching helps you work out what really matters to you. Which do you think is the more effective? You know, and this is something I see, and forgive me if some of you are academics, but I see this when I go into universities and I deal with academics and professors and doctors of literature and psychology, and they're lovely people, but my goodness, they use complicated language. And between you and I, and it's a good thing this isn't being recorded, between you and I, it's a function of ego. It really is. It's someone pushing their ego onto their audience, you know, using that type of language. So please don't fall into that trap. If a simpler word exists, use it. If a shorter sentence conveys the same meaning, say it or write it. And if you're writing something, edit it, edit it, edit it until it cannot be made shorter without losing meaning. Okay, so very, very important. But some people like to sound authoritative, don't they? Yeah, it's a function of ego. It really is. So put your ego to one side. Okay. Listening, which is the other half of communication. We have questioning, we have listening, you know. In red, I've written the most important thing. People don't listen very well. Most people listen only to give them an opportunity to reply, not to understand. You know, they just want to jump into the conversation with their take, their thoughts, their feeling, their whatever. They're not there to understand. So the next time you're talking with someone, no matter who they are, I have a little challenge. I challenge you to listen for meaning, not just the words. Don't just think of the words they are using. What is the meaning that sits behind that? And meaning is linked to feeling. What is the meaning? What is the feeling that they are having? Now, active listening actually requires practice and discipline. It requires silence. So many people are not good at silence. It requires reflection and paraphrasing, saying back to the person what you've just heard. Ask and then listen without interruption. Do you know who some of the worst people are for this? And they should be the best. If you watch on television and you watch reporters, journalists asking people questions, they ask and they ask and they interrupt and they don't listen to the answer that's given. They don't ask one question, they'll ask 3 in a row. And they're journalists. I think they need to come to our coach training course. So ask and then listen without interruption. Let the full thought land. What does that mean? Take whatever the person has said, take it in, inwardly digest it before you respond. And summarize. I mean, this is a great technique to use whether you're a coach or not. When someone says something, you should clarify, and you could use these words, what I'm hearing is, or you could say, have I understood you correctly to mean that? On the right-hand side here, I've said these align with, I've just put the ICF, but it's almost all of the wonderful coaching accreditation bodies. In coaching, listen for what is not said. Very important. Notice emotion and energy. Look at the person. Look at their eyes, their face, their body, not just the words they're using. And it's the same in written. You can, when someone writes you a letter or an email, if you think about it and you look closely, You can almost feel the emotion behind the writing that went into that. You really can. Reflect back in the client's own language. And here's the one. Resist the urge to solve, to fix things. Resist it. Just hold that space. Okay, so structure. So the architecture, the framework of clarity. And this will not be new to you. You know, when I'm doing a speech, like a keynote speech or something, I structure it in the following way. I will tell people what I'm going to tell them. Then I tell them. And then at the end, I tell them what I have told them. And this is actually a very good structure in any conversation that you're having. So you might say to someone, well, look, today what I'd like to do is go over the following topics. Or today what I'd really like to do is discuss the following issues or points with you. And then you do it. And then at the end you say, now look, we've spent the last 20 minutes discussing these particular topics or points. So tell them what you're going to tell them, which is setting the context. It's telling them why they should listen, and it's telling them what they will hear, what they will gain. So it's actually quite important. In the middle, you then tell them one point, one idea at a time, logical sequence. Some people, when they speak, they're like a spider's web. They're going off in every single direction. They can't hold a train of thought. And then at the end, a recap, summarize your key points. The rule of three. Humans remember things in groups of three. This is not an accident. Now think of some of the big organizations in the world. NSA, CIA, FBI, MI5, and CIA. And there's so many. So many. This is not by accident. We are wired in our DNA, in our conscious, in our subconscious, to remember groups of three. So use it. Use it when you're with people. Signpost it. So you would say things like in your conversation, so look, my first point is this. My second point is this. And pause. Don't be like a machine gun going boom. Pause between your points. Okay. Bum, 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 bum. So written communication, again, this forms a huge part of what we do today. We live on email, don't we? We live on social media. We communicate so much using the written word. So, and I've just said what coaches need to get right, but it's not just coaches, it's anyone in life. So, for example, emails and follow-ups. They should be short, purposeful, warm. One key message per email, if possible. That's not always possible, but where possible. And always close with a clear next step. You know, I will email you again tomorrow, for example. I will set up a call for us to have a coffee on Zoom. I look forward to your reply. Can you get back to me by tomorrow? So a clear next step. Write in the client's language. Always be factual, never judgmental. And where possible, try and be action focused. You know, clarity wins clients. Avoid jargon. Oh, people love jargon, don't they? Especially from their own industry. How often have you ever been talking to someone new and they start off by giving you a huge list of their credentials. Has that ever happened to any of you? They just start by saying, let me tell you about me. I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. I've got this qualification, I've done this certificate. Oh my goodness. Let me ask you this. Does it impress you? Hopefully the answer is no. They think it does, but it's having exactly the opposite effect. So lead with the client's benefit, not your credentials. When I'm with a new potential client, I never tell them anything about me. Anything. I don't go into, let me tell you about my record. Let me tell you about my years of doing this. Let me tell you about my qualifications. They're not interested. Here's something I learned a long time ago. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I'd like you to write that down. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. They want to know you are interested in them, not the other way around. Another thing, call to action. You've probably all heard the phrase call to action, have you? It's the next step. Most people forget one, either when they're talking or when they're writing. And the most common mistake coaches make is burying the call to action at the end of a long, long email or sentence. So the call to action should be the last sentence, but it should be short, clear, actionable. For example, here, just see if I can think of one. Would you like to book a 30-minute discovery call? I have availability on Thursday and Friday. So that's a good call to action. Would you like to book a 30-minute discovery call? Question mark. I have availability Thursday and Friday. Very clear, very to the point. Okay. So common communication mistakes and how to deal with them. One is assuming your client knows what you know. Most of the time they won't or don't. And it's not client, this is anyone you're talking to in life. Someone you meet in a cafe and you're having a coffee with them. Don't assume they know what you know. So how do we get around that? We check. We ask a question. Don't use jargon. And I've shown you a few three-letter things here. But don't use it, especially if they're not in your industry. They won't know what it means. Over-explaining. I see this so often. Some people think that if they don't understand, I'll just speak for another 10 minutes. I'll just keep on speaking until they get it. And that's not the way to do it. So more words does not mean more clarity. Remember I said earlier, edit ruthlessly. Clear call to action. There should be a clear call to action. Passive voice regarding active. I've just given you a little example. Mistakes were made versus I made a mistake. Which is more powerful? Well, mistakes were made. I made a mistake. That's more powerful, isn't it? To stand up and say, I made a mistake. Yeah. And you're not skirting around it. Not checking for understanding. We should always ask, does that make sense? Or what questions do you have? Is there anything I need to explain in more detail? Right. Okay. Communication in a coaching session. I would like you all to do something. And most people here are coaches, even if you're not, doesn't matter. I would like you to write down one sentence how you currently explain what you do to clients, to new clients. Could you write, and if you don't want to write, go through it in your mind, but can you write down in one sentence how you currently explain what you do to new potential clients? It should be brief. Its purpose is to create a mental gear change. A short pause and a good question are more effective than a detailed explanation. We'll come back to this in about 5 minutes. So, powerful questions. Communication at its clearest. Short questions open opportunities more than long ones. Look at the example I've given here. What do you want? Short, clear, easy to understand. That is much better than, can you tell me a little bit about what it is you're hoping to achieve through this process? And short to the point. One question at a time. Remember, I talked about these journalists on television. They're useless. They ask politicians 3 questions in a row. Bang, 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 bang. Multiple questions create confusion. Right? The most common mistake in questioning, the most common, is asking 2 or 3 questions in one breath. The client will answer the easiest one and ignore the rest. This is what politicians do. They love it. They answer one of them and ignore the other 2. It gives them an out, gives them an escape. So one question and then silence. Think of that. One clear, short question, silence while you wait. Okay. On the right, I've said the most powerful question is the one the listener can not avoid answering. For coaches, a well-crafted question is a communication masterpiece. I say that again. A well-crafted question is a communication masterpiece. Clear, purposeful, and entirely in line with the client's thinking. So I've just picked this as an example because we're in the coaching industry. I could have picked any. Explaining coaching to new clients, the clarity test. The 60-second test. And again, if you're not a coach, don't worry. It's whatever you do. Can you explain what coaching is or what you do and what the client can expect in less than 60 seconds? And you should be able to. In fact, 60 seconds is absolutely the max. 60 seconds is a long time. So this is a question for you to think about, to look at later. Avoid the what is coaching? It's a trap. Don't talk about it academically. You describe the experience. So, not, oh yes, coaching will help you to grow. I've heard that so many times. Really? I don't want to put on any more weight. I'm fine, thank you. I don't want to grow. So rather than saying something like, imagine having a thinking partner who, and then you follow on. Use their language back to them. Listen for their words and then reflect them back. It builds rapport very, very quickly. And there's always the unspoken question. Everyone in life listens to their favorite radio station, WIIFM. Do you all know that? Everyone listens to that radio station, WIIFM. What is in it for me? What's in it for me? So they're always thinking in their mind, will this work for me? And that is the question we answer before they ask. So earlier I asked you to write down, how would you explain what you do in one sentence? When we have finished this call, I'd like you to spend a minute or two refining that, just refining it. And if you would like to share it with me, I would be honored. And if you want the copy of these PowerPoints, of course, they're yours to have. You just have to ask. We're nearly at the end. So key takeaways. Crystal clear communication for coaches and anyone at all. Clarity is our responsibility, the speaker. If the person we're speaking to is confused, that's feedback for us. It's not a failing in them. They haven't done anything wrong. They haven't failed. You know, I've heard people say in a conversation, oh, well, they're just stupid. I said it clearly. How could they not understand? Well, because you didn't say it clearly. You thought you did, but you didn't. So if the client is confused, that's our fault, not theirs. Know our outcome before we speak. What do you want them to think, to feel, or to do after your exchange with them? Plain language. Plain language is actually a professional skill. It really is. Speaking in academic language is not a professional skill. Function of the ego. Simple words signal mastery, not weakness. Listen carefully as you speak. Communication is a two-way road. The best communicators are also the best listeners. Structure. Tell them what you'll tell them. Tell them what you told them. And then always close the loop. Finish. Always finish by clarifying, confirming understanding, inviting questions, and agree the next step. Where are we? So the best communicators make the complex simple, the unfamiliar familiar, and the distant near. So I'd like you to finish in your mind this sentence. One thing I will communicate more clearly from now on is, and then I want you to finish that in your own mind. One thing I will communicate more clearly from now on is, and finally, one of the best ways to learn something is to teach it. So one of the best ways to learn to be a good communicator is to teach it. Teach it to others. Pass it on. Okay, be part of the chain. Part of the chain that I learned from people that taught me. I'm sharing mine with you. You share with others. Pass that on through the years, through the communities, through the generations. So thank you for your time today. It went on a little bit longer. Do we have any questions or any points or any thoughts?
Any thought I have actually, I don't know if it's coincidence or not, because this week Like I was all thinking about the communication and how can I do the self-improvement in communication. And because maybe I came across some people, that they have the lack of communication, they cannot even listen and really annoys me. And thank you for this great presentation, by the way.
Yeah, my pleasure, my absolute pleasure. Okay, listen, boys and girls, have a wonderful day, wonderful evening. Look after yourselves, spend time with the people you love, and I'll see you all again maybe next week. Take care, everyone.